of the whole exercise, but it is a general process coming in from... Yes, Justice Wabakama, congratulations on finishing this whole exercise.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
How
you.
has it been, right from the word go, at least to this moment when you have managed to reach here?
It has been quite fantastic, quite fantastic, given that we had to contend with something that was not foreseen, that is COVID-19.
Yes.
But I want to thank the people of Uganda. First of all, I want to thank God Almighty, and I want to thank the people of Uganda for having fully participated in all the activities that we undertook right from the year 2018. If it were not for their cooperation, we wouldn't have come this far. I want to thank the media, especially the media. They have played a very, very fantastic role in informing the people, sensitizing them, and publicizing our programs, and so on and so forth. We thank you so much, and really we hope that this country will move to a new trajectory. We pray that we all forgive one another, reconcile with one another, and work to build this beautiful country so that together we want to build.
Besides COVID-19, my lord, what are those other challenges that you have encountered as Electoral Commission, and what plans do you have not to face it again?
Now, of course, you can see we had the unfortunate episodes of the loss of lives of our dear Ugandans. In an electoral process, really, there shouldn't be such events, there shouldn't be such happenings where people have to shed blood, where people have to lose lives, because an election is supposed to be a peaceful process where we are nurturing and grooming our democracy, where we are electing leaders through peaceful means and not through violence. So it's unfortunate. That was really a very, it was a bad stain on our electoral processes, and we hope that, God willing, in the future we can work to resolve all these issues that bring about some of these unfortunate episodes in our political processes.
Okay, my lord, just my last one, because I know you must be the most tired person in the world
No,
now.
I'm not.
Okay, then let's move on.
Yeah.
Now, you have the remaining bit looks to be bigger.
Yeah.
Much as not national like the first ones that we have just concluded today.
Yeah.
You have the local governments countrywide,
Yeah.
mayors of the cities, mayors of the town councils, and their councils.
Yeah.
What kind of plans do you have, especially to ensure that you don't face the challenges you have faced in these two presidential and parliamentary?
Well, first of all, we have the local government elections and all these other remaining elections are still part of the entire electoral roadmap that we rolled out in 2018.
Okay.
And therefore, everything is in place. The ballot papers have been printed, they are ready. The necessary infrastructure is in place, logistics and so on and so forth. So we expect the only thing that we need our voters is not to get weary, not to get tired, and continue with the remaining elections, because the elections that are remaining, particularly for local government, involve leaders at the lower level. Okay. So we want to appeal to all the voters. Please, just like you turned up in big numbers for the presidential and parliamentary elections, we also urge you to turn up big numbers for the local government elections and so on and so forth.
My lord, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much.
A very good evening and welcome back from that presidential address, but we are taking it up from there, and this has been long in coming. We should have started a few minutes ago, but the presidential address is a presidential address. But my name is Charles Odongso, and welcome to the one of the last analysis from the election hub here at the UBC, and a fresh panel that is here, and we will be looking at some of the issues, the salient issues. The results have been now announced, and it's now clear, 100% reported from all over the country, and by Electoral Commission between sometime around 3:30, and it fell, of course, within the law, which should have been 4 p.m. Mandated by the law. And so we congratulate Electoral Commission, and we congratulate Ugandans, we congratulate everybody, all the stakeholders, the candidates especially. 11 of them all went through up to the end, no one fell off. And I will shortly be sharing with you snippets of the figures, how the scores were made, but especially for probably the first 5, in order to know what exactly happened and what going forward should be the focus for the country, and especially for duty bearers. To discuss all that, let me start with the person who is here on her maiden show, and that's the Honorable Sheila Kawamara Mishambi. She is a she's a veteran journalist. Many people don't remember that, but she's a former member of the East African Legislative Assembly, and a consultant, women's rights activist. Sheila, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Charles.
It's good to see you.
Thank you. Me too.
Good.
Yeah.
And on Sheila's left, at my extreme left, is Mr. Morrison Rakakamba, who is a researcher and a political analyst, but also makes no apology for speaking for the NRM. Morrison, you're most welcome back to the show.
A pleasure to be back.
You look sharp. What's up? Is it the election results?
No, well,
everything going well?
It's an interesting Uganda that is secure and going forward.
I like that. Securing your future.
The future of Ugandans. Yeah.
Good. And on my left, Mr. Ramadan Gobi, Professor of Economics, Political Economy at Makerere University Business School, and Gobi is an analyst and a panelist on Behind the Headlines show that we always have here every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Gobi, you're most welcome back to the show.
Thank you, and I'm becoming part of the furniture here. You should have added that.
In law, we would call you a permanent fixture.
No, thank you, Charles.
You are now part of the land here. But no, it's duty. Duty has called, and we are all, I think we are all getting relieved that this is ending, and we hope and pray that it continues as peacefully as it is going on. Let me start by just recapping very fast. Some of them you are seeing on your screen, but the main ones that Byabakama announced, the final results, of course, like I said, 100% all reported. That's the results from across the country. And the candidate who is now president-elect is the incumbent, and he scored, from my notes here and what is showing on the screen, you can see there, 5,851,037 votes, which represent 58.64%. If you had predicted that, send us your evidence and we discuss. Following him, the man in red is the Honorable Chagulanyi Sentamu, and popularly known as Bobby Wine to many of his fans. He scored 3,475,298 votes, representing 34.83%. The third one is the Honorable Engineer Patrick Amuriat Oboy, known as also POA. He likes calling himself POA in brief. And he scored 323,536 votes. That represents 3.24%. The third one was, that was the third one, Patrick Amuriat. The fourth one was Honorable Retired Major General Gregory Mugisha Muntu, who scored, where is it? He scored 65,334, representing 0.65%. And the fifth one was the Honorable Norbert Mao, also known as Chairman. He scored 55,665. That represents 0.56%. Now, we will be mentioning the rest later. But another interesting thing, I decided that we first take the first 5. The rest, the 6, we shall discuss them as we go along. Interesting statistics. The number of registered voters we had this year, 18,103,603. That's registered voters as reported by Justice Byabakama. The total number of polling stations across Uganda, we have this year 34,684. Now, listen to this. The number of invalid votes in this election were 381,886. That represents 3.68%. Yeah, you heard me right. Represents 3.68%. Now, my calculation, and you can calculate, if you took about 8 candidates, if you took Norbert Mao's votes plus Mugisha Muntu's votes, Kabuleta's votes, Nancy Kalembe's votes, Willie Mayambala, John Katumba, Henry Tumukunde, Fred Mwesige's votes, and you added all of them, the 8 combined, still the number of invalid votes is more than the total number of votes scored by all the 8 candidates. That's where we are going to start our discussion from. But let me finish by saying the total number of votes cast, the total number this year have been 10,359,479. The valid ones were 9,978,093. Those are the figures we are going to be dealing with. And most importantly, before I end on these statistical details, the turnout this year was 57.22%. That is the voter turnout. And you will realize in 2016, the voter turnout was about 65.7. And again, importantly, the candidate who is now the president-elect, declared president-elect Museveni, has got less votes this year than he got in 2016, as well as the second candidate. Let's start on that, on some of those details. Sheila, what do the results in their wholesomeness, for starters, mean for you?
I thank you so much, Charles. I think for me, one, I would start by congratulating Ugandans for really going through this process. It hasn't been easy. We've seen so many dynamics going on, and so much tension, so much energy, and some of it has been scary, especially for maybe I would say the first-time voters, but some of us have been seasoned. We've seen worse crises over the years, but I would say that we had a very, very peaceful elections. And looking at the statistics, as you've read them, as we've been following up the votes, of course, there has been a lot of dynamics going on. We saw from 2016, we saw between 2016 2021, we had Kano Kizza Besigye getting off the scene, and that has had an impact. He had a very great following. So many people believed that Kano Kizza Besigye at one time would become president of Uganda. So him getting off the scene, of course, destabilized the FDC. And we've seen the impact it has had. Of course, we had the FDC splitting, and the members, some of the members of FDC, definitely the diehards, I'm sure some of them have decided either not to vote at all, and that will definitely, they are registered voters, but maybe they never went to vote. It could have influenced the statistics. And then we have people who have moved from party to party, like people who deserted their original parent parties, moving from DP, and we see them going to NUP. We had people who are diehards of UPC. UPC is not anywhere in the picture, but I'm sure that it has the supporters. Maybe those are not going to vote for any of the candidates that fronted themselves. So all that could have affected the way people have voted, and it affects the statistics. And I hope that in the next 5 years, one of the things I would really desire is for people to go back, those who are politically active, to go back to the drawing board and look at how do we strengthen the party structures. Because I think we are losing out on the richness of the parties that have been built over the years. The Democratic Party, the Uganda People's Congress, we are losing out now on Forum for Democratic Change, FDC, and that is going to impact the growth of democracy in this country.
Okay, Morrison, wholesomely.
No, well, wholesomely, let me first of all...
From the results, the major statistics.
No, but I need first congratulate my candidate, who is the NRM chairman.
Please go ahead.
Who won, so congratulations to General Yoweri Museveni and the National Resistance Movement, and even the candidates that were below the ballot, the members of parliament. So NRM did well, really across the country. But also congratulate, all these other parties and other candidates that participated in this process, because the protest, the contest would not have been, a viable one if NRM, was competing against itself. So I also congratulate the competitors, because even some of them, especially at MP level, they also won and picked some few seats here and there. So I think, congratulations. This is a democracy really going forward. But to Shira's point, I want to say that because of the prevailing circumstances, especially so COVID-19, amidst a pandemic, to have people at least marshal some level of discipline to participate in campaigns with some level, meaningful level of discipline, but also on the election day to come out, with COVID still a clear and present danger, but they manage to come out, they mask up, they get into those lines and manage to cast their vote. I think for me that is a badge of patriotism that should really be saluted. So I salute Ugandans really for coming out. I know it is 57%, almost, 8 or so percentage points in terms of voter turnout compared to 2016. But because of the COVID pandemic, I think really that made a major impact on the voter turnout. But of course, also the other aspect is, many people also, many Ugandans, from what I've been hearing, had this feeling that President Museveni has already won. So some of them, there was this complacency. Anyway, the president has already won, and perhaps they were not seeing very serious, contenders who would threaten his vote. So they were like, well, this is a fait accompli. It's already finished. So some of them also did not possibly show up. Then I think that, statistically, from what you have been reading, I think the issue of invalid votes because I think the number of invalid votes in 2016 was actually 400,000.
It was about 447?
Yes, over and above 400. Yes, over and above 400,000. Now it's where 380,000, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I think there are issues
381.
here. Yes, there are issues here. One, President Museveni, in his victory speech, spoke about it briefly and said these are NRM voters, but you know, who are farmers. This could be the before UPE, you know, people, you know, who were not, who were not yet really, who didn't get the privilege, perhaps of going through, literacy, numeracy, and all those other things. But also, too, I think is a requirement or a need for increased investment by Uganda's Electoral Commission to really invest in voter education and to look at the process of electioneering in the country as a process and not an event. For example, today, a few days ago on January 14th, there was voting. Voting is continuing. We still have local council elections, especially LOC 5s, the mayors, the LOC 3s, the special interest groups. But, we shall have, by-elections possibly in this 2021-2026 term. So I think the Electoral Commission should have the resources, both in terms of money and manpower, but also collaborate with perhaps civil society agencies and other groups to continue this voter education as part of civic education, in my view, should be a continuous process. And I think absence of that, leads to disenfranchisement by default. So in my view, these are people who are functionally disenfranchised because they couldn't be able to tick properly, or they spoiled the vote. So I think that is also something interesting. Then the final piece really is that even when we had 3 million new voters joining the voters' roll, and of course definitely these are young people, so I want to agree with President-elect Yoweri Museveni that it was not necessarily true that young people were just going to vote NUP because NUP candidate was biologically younger. It shows that the young people did not break for NUP in the numbers that NUP expected. I think young people, who registered recently or who got on the voters' roll, I think, voted for a candidate that has over 5 million votes, although I do believe that the NUP candidate also got some few votes. And to Shira's point, this has been largely peaceful, at least from the voting day, the counting, and up to when the results have been declared and sealed and delivered. I think it has been generally peaceful, so I also want to call upon the viewers, the Ugandans, to really continue, this good behavior of being peaceful, because we don't have any other country. This is our country, and we hope that the peace continues going forward.
Gobi, what's your view now with the final? I know that we have been discussing this going, from the beginning, but now that the results are out, no more speculation. What's the general view that you have about it?
I think first it shows from the results that this was a quite competitive election, particularly between the incumbent and the second or the first run-up. And to link a bit to what Sheila and Morrison have talked about, I would want to make it clear also that for the second election running, we are having invalid votes as the third candidate of this outcome. The number of invalid votes, they are higher than what the third person scored or polled. Last time, 2016, it was 4.6%. Now it's a slightly lower, 3.6 or 7%, you may say that. But this is still a massive number of invalid votes. And much as we need to do some as Morrison has indicated, some voter education and civic education and so on, I would also really want to see maybe in the future a provision where they could audit these invalid votes. I have a feeling that we are becoming so overzealous in
Throwing
out votes of people that they are invalid simply because a tick went slightly outside the box. Yeah. Someone, once you can identify that this person has voted for a particular individual, the intention is clear. Why do you invalidate such a vote? Imagine, Charles, that in this election, President Museveni got, say, 49.9%, and the second person got, say, 45 something. And we have invalid votes of this magnitude, 381,000. And we are supposed to go for a rerun. Should we just go for a rerun, or we really have, say, tribunal to look at these so-called invalid votes, and we make sure that every single vote which was declared invalid was actually invalid? But this time, so saying, you put your thumbprint outside the box, but it was put in the face of a candidate I want. Why should that be invalid? So I think in the future we need really to help Uganda, because Uganda is not a country operating on the moon. There are so many people, our old people, or someone, the hand may be shaking and he gets the tick outside the box. I don't think that should be invalidated. So there is need to also audit on the bit, because they are growing in number, and in the future I anticipate it might be a decisive, segment of our vote.
Okay.
You want me to stop there for now?
Had you finished?
Let me stop there.
Okay, good. Then the issue now we have to move to let me start this with Morrison Rokakamba, who is an NRM member. Your candidate, by the way, on that note, I need to say that I think we are still expecting Joel Senyonyi, who is the spokesperson for the National Unity Platform, but is also now an MP-elect for Nakawa West. He had promised to come and join us, but before he came here, I think there was an emergency and he had to rush to their headquarters because we wanted to balance the discussion on especially the candidate number 1 and number 2. But Morrison, your candidate has got less votes than he got in 2016. And yet, like you said, there were 3 million votes added in this year on the register. Don't you think that that means something more than, for your mobilization as well? No.
I think really the issue is the turnout. Out of 18 million registered voters, actually that's a number that Professor Govi, has doubts on. He thinks it's a bit inflated. But out of 18 million, only 10 plus million people turned out. So the issue really is, what are the circumstances?
But they would still be more in percentage
the issue for me is the circumstances.
Okay.
And the circumstances, this was really a COVID election. People are fearing for their lives. That's why I said those who managed to get out should be given really a badge of patriotism. But also too, President Museveni explained it while giving this, while just making a speech. He said, I didn't even manage as a candidate, to go and campaign on a rally, invest in get out the vote operations at the grassroots level. Because remember, those last minute get out the vote operations, that organizational capacity, that deployment is very important to get out the votes, to get people to come to the polling stations and cast their votes. So I think this election was really strange. And for me, it was a surprise that we even managed to get a 57% voter turnout. But also, conversely, there are other elections that happened. Like, for example, recently in the United States, where even amidst the pandemic, you actually had huge turnout compared to their previous elections. But it's because they introduced certain measures. For example, absentee ballots, where you can, you don't have to go and line up, but also early voting, where you can just go around and you vote, people voting in a space of 2 weeks. So if we had wanted, for example, expand, the voter turnout, perhaps the Electoral Commission could have said, for example, you can vote anywhere you are, as long as you send your ballot via your internet, but we have via your email, through the internet. We haven't reached that level, but I think in future there can be those measures. Then finally, the consequentiality of an election. Was it a do or die? Did, for example, because really what usually motivates like the opposing forces, if you will, is that like the incumbent has performed so poor, so badly in a term, or the incumbent is so dangerous that it is so the election is consequential. Some people are saying this is an election of Ensonga. But you see, that was not the case. So people were like, some people in the position didn't show up because they were like, well, the options that we have may be, are not also extremely very interesting.
But don't you think that, based on that, don't you think on that point that we are we are actually forgetting too fast a history that we had? Yesterday we discussed here the role of the heated and very divisive campaign of Toji Kwatako just 2 years ago, that, almost brought us to a standstill. The first time physical fights, the military entering parliament to secure the peace and stability, and it was so divisive, and that people said, why are you amending? People said, and then the rest said, the majority said, no, we think that it is important for the incumbent to first stay, hence amend and make sure that he doesn't get stopped by the age limit. And then the other side said, no, if that is the case, let's also amend to ensure the younger people also come on board. You remember it used to be 35, is it 35? Upwards. Then they removed it. Hence, Katumba Oye and the younger people. Yes. So don't you think that that meant that this election was, of a high consequence?
I think you would, if you looked at it in a way that members of parliament that voted to remove age limit, did they survive? For example,
many survived.
They survived,
but many were purged.
But you see, purged in line with the trend that has been on, that you have a high attrition rate at the level of parliament. So, because you see, the issue of constitutional amendments at that parliamentary level, it's the discussion that we had yesterday, is so much removed, in my view, that legislation aspect from like the real, real people issues at the grassroots level who are interested. Is this community access road there, their medicines, is our church, roofed? There are these community, did farmers get the seedlings?
Okay.
Yeah, so I think the effect of legislative agenda on how people make choices at the grassroots level is really a bit different.
Okay. Sheila, I'm going to give you the task of I don't want to give it to Morrison, the task of hazarding, the camp of Bobby Wine, of Honorable Chagulanyi. The second candidate, if in comparison terms, in 2021, got less votes than the second candidate, who was Dr. Besigye, in 2016, despite the 3 million additional voters on the voters register. So almost similar question to the one Morrison answered. But in your view, why do you think this was so? And yet this election was heralded as, you know, the one where there was a lot of, there was massive, call out to young people to come up and vote, first voters, then the old ones. The stakes are high. What do you think exactly happened?
I think, anyway, I stand to be corrected, and I hope I do not make some people agitated. But I would say that Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye had been on the scene for quite some time, and of course the FDC had a national appeal. He was all over. He had really combed the entire country, so he had support from all over the place. And when you look at the NUP, with all the dynamics around its formation and how it came into being, I think it's not more than a year since it became a party. So, and when it formed into a party, it quickly moved towards an ethnic grouping. So it kind of alienates the rest of the country, and people begin seeing it more as a tribal kind of grouping. And of course this was manifesting even at the polling stations. I remember when I mentioned my name and somebody said, Echichi? Eh?
Where?
Where I was voting from in close to Kampala here. And the polling agents laughed, and they didn't do it only to me, they did it to all the people who had names that were not Chiganda names. And I was like, okay, this is it. Now this is the determining point. If I went to the polling station and I wasn't sure, then I would see that I don't belong. So I think in a way there was a bit of alienation. Much as you would want to sympathize with the cause, some people were being alienated last minute, and then people go in now for survival. So that could have had an impact that yes, there were people who would have voted for Museveni, but now there was a rallying point. We need to vote as a bloc. We all belong to Central Uganda, and we need to defend our own. So I think we need to move away to being more nationalistic. And some people could have voted for President Museveni last minute, simply because of that kind of a sense that you don't belong here. Even if you vote for us, you don't belong. So that could have had an impact on the number of the people that would have voted for Honorable Kyagulanyi could have been alienated last minute.
Okay. As a follow-up, Gobi, there are questions now being asked. And I don't know who said, I think it was again Honorable Sheila, the issue of multi-party growth, and it came to my mind as a follow-up. Honorable Amuriat, a very passionate, energetic, enthusiastic candidate, has only got 323,536, representing 3.24%. Dr. Besigye, but this is FDC party, official candidate. Dr. Besigye got 3.6 million, representing about 36, I think, percent in the last election, 2016. Yeah. And therefore, some people are asking the question: are the supporters of the party, or are they supporters of an individual? At what point does a party or any candidate take up the support of another candidate past, or that they are succeeding? And the same question could be asked after President Museveni, because I think that's a genuine fear that even NRM members now have. That is it individual merit ingrained in our blood, political blood, that if we change Museveni and we bring in another candidate, we might get less votes? What is your view?
My view is that we don't have multipartyism here. And it's as simple as that. When you look at what you call FDC, what you call NUP, DP and others, they have been over years since we resumed multi-party politics in Uganda on paper, calling themselves opposition against the incumbent, actually opposition against Museveni, not necessarily even against NRM. And for that they said, we have a struggle. It's called a struggle.
To remove struggle.
And this struggle is to remove Museveni. So when Dr. Besigye declared that it's not going to stand, I suspect two things happened. Number one, those younger people who he had mobilized to enter the struggle now said, who is likely to really take on the baton and take forward the struggle? And that appeared to be Honorable Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. So some of them gave him the votes. Others said that, no, I don't want to give my vote, which I was giving to Dr. Besigye, because of his personality and the message he has and where he has come from. I will stay home. I will not vote. I suspect another one said, no, FDC as a party, we need to continue building it, and therefore I will support Honorable Amriat, much as I know is not going to be impactful. So he gave some. Those came and gave some to Amriat, while others said, no way. I think I should do, now that it seems this struggle has failed, at least up to this point, I would rather give this vote to Yoweri Museveni to stabilize the country. Because I remember even a statement made by, and it was quite arising for me, by a lady called Ingrid Turinawe. She said that, I think, by the way, first and foremost, Ingrid Turinawe, I heard from media that was campaigning for President Museveni in Rukunjiri. That was a shock for me, first. But then she went ahead and said that, you know, without Besigye, FDC is worse, actually, than President Museveni. So he said, I would rather take my vote there. So you can see that there are a lot of things which are happening in this so-called multi-party politics because of, first and foremost, as I've said on this panel a number of times, Uganda is still making just baby steps as far as elective democracy is concerned. Uganda is just, I think, started to vote, if you can say more seriously, you know, before we came to where my good friend Honorable Sheila was telling us her own story when she was voting in the 80s. I don't think that was voting. I think seriously the voting started in 1996 and it has happened for at least this period, uninterrupted up to today. So you can comfortably say Uganda has a democracy of about 24 years. So these are too few years for a country to really perfect multi-party or even elective democracy. For that matter, principled democracy. I therefore feel that we need to do a lot of things to change this trajectory. And to me, the conversation we need to have as a country, now given especially this election we have seen, this has been a rude awakening kind of election. Which type of country do we want to have or to build? What quality of leaders we want to carry this country forward at leave alone the presidential level, come to the legislative level, go to the local government. We are now going into those elections. Which type of leaders do we really feel that they should carry this country forward? And what kind of KPIs should we give them? Huh? The key performance indicators. Because look, Charles, we all know the history of Uganda. We know where it has come from. We know where it is. But do we know where it is going? And how we would want it to get there? Is it a matter of betting that we can say, let us throw the die and see? Or we should define seriously the type of country and leadership that we should have? Because I want to tell you, I've listened to the president talking, and I think himself he has also gotten a very good rude awakening on the way he thought about the democracy of Uganda and the leadership and so on. Because at one time he said, you can wake up, like we said the other day, choose any leader you want, for as long as they will wake up in parliament and vote NRM. Does he still hold such a view, having witnessed what? Because we have seen how the voting has happened, the trends. Do we really sit down and say, let us be here on these chairs, there are about 5 of them or 4. If Mr. Byabakama, it's called Byabakama, the Electoral Commission
Simon Byabakama, Mujenyi,
held the paper and announced that now Honorable Kyagulanyi Ssentamu has scored the highest vote and is the president of Uganda. And now the legislature of 500 plus is full of the struggle guys. We are going to the bush. What would happen? How would Uganda be? What would be the country going forward for investment, for the security of the country, for me, I don't want for us to be here and discuss the simple things on just looking at the numbers. This one has got this. We need to really seriously to think, which type of a country are we building? If the President Museveni, for example, was voted out and perhaps NRM is kicked out, do we have a chance of having this leadership that can hold this country together, the unity, and we don't go back to the politics which he has talked about of religion, of tribe, of, you know, those innuendos. So I would want, since we have...
Does anyone want to respond onto that? 1 minute each, because, and he raises a fundamental point, and I know that sometimes it can be bothersome and a dilemma for us moderators. We have to take high the debate, sometimes bring it down to reality, and that we do. And for me, I have no apologies for that, because when he asks that important question, my mind goes to 2 things, and that I need you, Sheila and Morrison, to think about, because these are realities of life. That one, are we the first country for that to happen in? Hasn't it happened in Kenya, where after 28 years of Moi, then they woke up one day and they must change? That's the reality of life. But 2, President Museveni is a human being, and he also says it. He says, if I am out of this place, I must move, whether it is, you know, God taking him, or, you know, if he decides to move, he must move. It is a factor of life one day. So what happens?
You see, countries that rarely go to chaos, you know, especially post elections or any change of government, are really countries where people have a stake in a country, where economic development, social ties, much more important things than division. The reason why, for example, Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore started a program that at least every Singaporean you know, he created a mortgage structure where everyone should own a flat. So to that extent, if you own a flat, or your uncle owns a flat, or your sister owns a flat, it's very difficult for you to go and burn and burn down a town. Here in Kenya, there was violence, there was chaos. But the reason why it was extinguished very quickly, it was not because Kofi Annan and all these United Nations people flew to Kenya. It was because the business community of Kenya that has very serious vested interest in a stable Kenya invited the warring parties. Raila Odinga, Ruto, where are you? Uhuru, where are you? We cannot allow you to destroy our country. And since it's got, you know, there was a sense into the minds of those political leaders. So I think as we, as a country, as we develop and move forward and have this wealth, in my view, spread and have shared growth, I think the stakeholdership in this country, every citizen becoming a real shareholder, a real stakeholder, I think is going to save us from violence, from chaos, and also help us to select and elect leaders who are going to help us sustain whatever we have, but also, I think, in my view, improve it. Which brings me to the worry that you actually had, that, for example, when Besigye left FDC and you had Amuriat, he performed very badly. So you are saying if Museveni was not the NRM flag bearer, then what happens? I actually believe that even if a political party is so entrenched for years, if they are not very careful on the flag bearer, on the candidates they put, you know, at the forefront, then they are going to lose. In the United States, the selection of Hillary Clinton as a flag bearer, at least the postmortem when she left, the analysis is that she was not the right candidate at the right moment. If they had an inspiring candidate, an Obama-like or perhaps a Biden-like or somebody else, perhaps they could have won. So the challenge for NRM would therefore be, with the processes in the NRM, you know, be deep dive and make sure that they pick up a candidate carefully who would be interesting, for example, who would energize the NRM base and take forward, you know, a post-Museveni agenda. So the failure for NRM at that point, or the success, will, in my view, depend on the kind of candidate that they pick. Finally, the consequences of, you know, because the president talked about, are we now moving from a new Uganda to the old Uganda that the NRM had extinguished? Because the old Uganda was political parties of tribe, of religion.
But
DP,
was it extinguished, or it had just been
undercover? Because DP was...
Because if it was extinguished, it wouldn't have come up.
DP is, you know, Didi Apapa. DC, UPC, Uganda, Peoples of Canterbury, something like that. But now, what we see, because Shira was in a line, you know, trying to vote, and because she's Kawamara, somebody was saying, was very suspicious. So are we going back to that? And the president was really concerned. He said, perhaps these people who are talking about the new Uganda, we are talking about taking us back to an old Uganda. And you see, democracies are fragile, my brother. The United States, which is 230-something years, yes, you know, 244 years, you know, got problems recently, you know, where insurrectionists, you know, stormed the capital, and the whole world is shocked. So we have to keep the rules, we have to keep the norms, but we must have a reminder that what was there before NRM, that old bad Uganda, can come back if we don't hold steady.
Okay, Sheila, what's your view about that? Is it something that we must so be scared about? Or we can as well, yes, Kenya might be, like he said, but Tanzania has tested it and has been changing, and, you know, a freedom fighter, Nyerere, the father of the nation, then from there goes to Hassan Mwinyi, Mzee Hassan Mwinyi, then it even goes to a journalist. Benjamin Kappa was a journalist, actually, who was, and then joined the government, but was like you, Sheila, a journalist. And then from a journalist, it went to a soldier, a colonel. Kikwete, and then back to a classroom teacher. You know, the current guy is a teacher, meaning, therefore, for them, their tests, you know, or their experiments are working with, you know, human resource that is available across board. They are not fearing.
But I think comparing to Tanzania, I don't know whether I want us to go to the Tanzania.
I was just using it to
because
escalate the
Tanzania,
but it can be any of you.
Yeah, Tanzania is the way they have structured their democracy. You don't just jump out of nowhere and become president of Tanzania. All those guys are cadres of CCM. I recall Nyerere's assertion when His Excellency President Jakaya Kikwete at that time wanted to be president. And he said, this is not a
you
beauty
young
contest.
Man. He called him, you young man.
Yes.
First sit there.
Yes, first.
It is not your time.
It's not your time to come on board. So I think that it is their kind of democracy, and they know who is coming, who is in line, and how they want you to act. But I would have preferred Uganda to have a more vibrant democracy. And I think our opposition parties, our opposition leaders have done us a disservice. Because I'm one of those people who really advocated in the late 1990s. We really advocated and pushed for the restoration of multi-party democracy. And our thinking at that time, we thought that we would grow into those, reform the original parties we had, and bring in new blood and bring new dynamics, and we get an alternative. Because in my opinion, I feel that any functional kind of democracy should have an alternative ideology. Because if we have the movement and they have this package for us, the opposition should have an alternative package. And that way we keep the other in check. But right now we don't have like I don't see, over the years, I don't see a government in waiting. Because if you are defeated in politics, you form a government which could take power come next time. And I'm not seeing that, and to me that is a big disservice. The NRM also shouldn't be jubilating on their part, saying that we have destroyed the parties, because I recall one time President Museveni came out to say that come 2021 we won't have opposition. To me that was a big disservice to this country, because even when you are a leader, you need to hear the opponents. What are they saying? What are what is their position? Right now, NUP, we know that the politicians who have gone into a NUP, many of them to me are highly suspect. Because you don't abandon your party overnight simply because you want to be elected into parliament. Because parliament is not just a place for jokers or an employment opportunity, the way people are making it look like. Parliament is serious business. We are talking about the allocation of resources for our country. We are talking about how laws are going to be decided, how the legislations, and we are talking about how this country, or keeping the executive in check. But now if we are getting everybody into parliament, simply for the wrong reasons, I think we should be scared as a country.
Okay, I saw your hand up.
I wanted to just hammer one point home. That, Charles, Uganda, from this election, must learn about 3 things. Number one, we must, as a country, define very clearly the future we need to have. And in that, let us take away this politicking and so on, and really go back and decide what type of a fountain of honor should Uganda have. And you define. Parliament. Which type of parliament does Uganda need? Not want, but need. In terms of numbers, in terms of the qualities of the legislators, and in terms of the pay of those legislators. We've turned the parliament into a lucrative kind of institution where people go to earn 30 million shillings a month. They sell houses, they go in there. When they see that they are about to lose their constituency because perhaps there is some place which is not supportive of their candidature, then they go, mobilize the public to demand that this constituency of ours should be carved this way, split into two. Then they create two of them.
Then one becomes east.
One becomes east, another one becomes west.
And then another one
North,
remains that name.
Another one. Then
We are about to have northeast.
then we shift the benches.
But there is a constituency, I think, like that.
It has northeast.
Yes, there is a constituency, one somewhere. I need to just cross-check. We discussed it in Parliament when they were...
Morrison, Charles, stop laughing. This is a very serious matter
I agree with you.
affecting this,
Sorry for
the
laughing,
future of this
Professor.
country.
But this is how we relieve ourselves of the challenge you're talking about.
Of the stress.
Then we decided that a member of parliament is going to be facilitated to do legislative work. 5 million shillings a month. Whoever can't
Take that.
represent people by earning 5 million shillings should stay somewhere and get a job and do whatever. But turning legislation into a source of income has caused us now to have I don't know how they are going to fit in that room where they are supposed to
There's
sit.
going to be 524.
They are building a new chambers, I know, but they are not yet ready. They are going to go and fix themselves in there. Now we have COVID. And it's not likely to, social distancing is going to continue for as long as this virus is still here until everybody has been immunized. Now, where are they going to sit? The same with the local government leaders. Local government leaders, they are the key implementers of the key services of Ugandans. But which quality of local governments do we have? I am a researcher who has done research about local governance in Uganda. The way they are funded, the way they are doing their work. That is where the crisis of all crises in Uganda is actually, at local government level. Which type of leaders do we want? You see, Walter Lippmann said that no country, and you know these philosophers, we need to listen to them. Walter Lippmann was a philosopher in America in 1900 there, 05. He wrote a book. And in that book he said that any country which cannot protect itself from the tramplings and rage of the bewildered herd does not have a future. That country will not. Bewildered herd is what? He said that there are two classes of people in a country. There is a specialized class, which is supposed to be a small group of people leading the country. Then there is the bewildered herd. You know, some of us have ever grazed animals. When a herd gets excited,
They have smelt water.
like you are taking them for watering and they are running.
They go kicking behind legs and all that.
One animal starts kicking, then others also kick
While they're jumping,
out of fashion. If you try to stop those animals by getting in front of them, they will trample you to death. And this is what I see now. Most of these countries in Africa, which think because the United States of America has a democracy of a certain nature that anyone can come up, we have also now gone into that kind of trend or fashion, and to me it's not sustainable.
Okay, Morrison, I know that you are raising your hand, itching to respond or add to what Gobi was saying, but I've been asked, let's go for a break right now, and then when we come back we will tackle some of the major issues. We will look at, I need us to, Morrison, I think one of the discussants talked about stability, and there has been all this thing about, if you are going to vote for someone else, it should be a man with a strong hand, another soldier, another military man. And then Katumba, not Wamala, sorry, General, but Katumba Oye. I think it is easier to call him Katumba Oye, not Katumba Joseph. So Katumba Joseph Katumba John shocks the hell out of the generals and beats
you are
them.
struggling even to mention the name of the presidential candidate.
And you are talking about the quality of the fountain of honor.
Absolutely.
We could have got Katumba as our fountain of honor, but would he deserve it? Let's answer that question after that break.
For him.
Doesn't tolerate violence against children.
Because a good school equals a better life.
Raising voices.
Notice peanut butter. Enjoy the real taste of Notice natural peanut butter that spreads happiness to the whole family. Available in smooth, crunchy, and chocolate nut variants. Pick a size that fits your pocket from 125 grams, 250 grams, 400 grams, and 800 grams. Notice peanut butter, the real peanut butter. Available in all leading supermarkets. Enjoy Bella Hibiscus juice and wine from the regional producers K. Roma Uganda Limited. You can get hibiscus juice and Bella wines in all shops and supermarkets all over the country, or find us at Mall Petrol Station Wandigia. For orders, call us on 0772 506155. Buy Uganda, build Uganda.
At Bella, enjoy our products, stay safe, wash your hands, wear your masks, keep distance, avoid crowds.
Shopping needs, come to Capital Shoppers. We have a variety of items like foods, garments, cosmetics, and all sorts of drinks. Enjoy your shopping experience at affordable prices in our fully stocked branches in the following areas: Mtinda Station Road, opposite Makere Business School along Port Bell Road, Duster Street opposite Nakasero Market, and Garden City on Yusuf Lule Road. To all our customers and suppliers, we thank you for your continuous support. Stay safe, wash your hands, sanitize, and wear your mask always.
Yellow, how are you? Tell me, how do you do? We're here to show some appreciation for the things you do. Sent you for today, and we sent you for tomorrow. Sent you for every time and everywhere you go. We love you so, and we enjoy life with you. We are happy, happy, happy to know that we will go with you. That's why we say, sent you, sent you, sent you, yeah.
Thank you for choosing MTN. Use MTN mobile money, bundles, or other services to get Thank You points. The more you use, the more Thank You points you get. We look forward to many more years together. Thank you.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
Connect to the world for free on Ayoba. Chat with friends for free. Play games all day for free. Jam to Ziki for free. You can also send money through Ayoba. Absolutely no MBs needed. To download the app, visit www.mtn.co.ug/mymtn and select Ayoba.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Say something about that body.
Welcome back from that break, and this is the UBC Election Hub, and we are looking at the results as they came. We're looking at the dynamics around the results, the variables, if you like, of the presidential results that were announced this afternoon. And by now we know the details, and discussing that we have Mr. Morrison Rakakamba. He is a researcher and analyst. He speaks for the NRM. We have Honorable Sheila Kawamara.
I don't have
Mishambi.
a job. I don't want you to complain. I'm a member of the National Resistance Movement.
Yes, and you know every member must be an ambassador.
Okay, that one I accept.
So OO should not complain.
Okay.
OO and Honorable Dombo should not complain. And then we have Mr. Ramadan Gobi, who is a professor of economics at Makerere University Business School. Before we went into the break, you talked about the need, and the serious one you emphasized, to ensure that as a country we look at, you know, the quality of leaders that we need to have in order for the country to be safe. And but before, and Morrison was itching to respond. But before Morrison responds, allow me read some questions and comments that have been sent and roping in the discussion. Someone who has requested that I keep his or her name as anonymous says, Charles and the panelists, multi-party politics has not been allowed to organize along meaningful political parties. Even the NRM, and this is what we were discussing, the person says, even the NRM is built around the strength of Museveni as President Museveni as a person. I suspect after him, we might not hear about the NRM as well. A meaningful multi-party democracy must be nurtured. That is what they say. Then another person says, here, I want to commend you. Coverage of the election was far better than, thanks a lot. And this, you should have said your name. This is a good comment for the management of UBC. The person says, coverage of the election has been far better than any other network. Other than simply announcing results, you're doing serious analysis as well, accompanying the coverage. There has been insightful discussions on the performance of parties and their implications to the country. Thank you so much, Mr. No or Mrs. No Name, and thanks to Gobi and Sheila and Morrison and the rest who have come here. And then another person says, this one is also okay. This one is also good, saying that I hope this kind of analysis can be done twice a week, not only once a week. Gobi, there you are. And then another person is asking, actually this is for Gobi. The person says, I am Jasper, and I'm asking Gobi, how many polling stations did we have in 2016 compared to this year? Then he says, did those in barracks also vote from the barracks? I don't think you should be asked this question, but I wanted, for transparency's sake, that you should hear that someone is asking you. The
producer should help us.
The producer can help us. Morrison, you were itching to supplement what Gobi had said earlier for the quality of the leaders we need.
Because Gobi talked about the quality of leadership, and as a country to immerse ourselves and start discussing really the questions of how do we improve not just the governance aspects of our democracy, but also the operational aspects of effective service delivery and transformation of the country, and getting different ideas from different political actors. But when President Museveni was speaking today, looks like he's starting from that base. He has said, he used some tough word, I think it was nonsense or something, and said of members of parliament, setting even their own salaries must stop. He says this big parliament that is coming in, especially the NRM, members of parliament, he says he's going to first summon them to Chankwanzi to really have that hardcore debate. And I think that's very important. But having said that, let's really look at the architecture of our parliament. Should Uganda, a 40 billion USD economy, be having 520 members of parliament? What are they exactly discussing? Okay? That's for me, the Chankwanzi conversations should really touch some of those things. Should Uganda, a 40 billion United States dollars country, be having how many districts?
146.
146 districts. Is that really viable? Or we are pushing towards, over-administration that comes with recurrent expenditure that is not targeted to service delivery? I think.
But didn't you argue that democracy is expensive?
No, this is why I am actually coming to that point.
The alternative to democracy is anarchy.
I am coming to the... guys. No, I'm coming to that point.
But that is a creation of still the ruling party.
So the other question...
Absolutely.
Yeah, but we are saying these are very serious issues that should be discussed. We shouldn't throw them under the carpet. The other issue is, should we be having 80 ministers, for example? Is that, or should we be having a cabinet of only politicians without professionals? Those are very important conversations. Because you see, the reason I'm saying that, it was expensive not to do it, perhaps for me 20 years ago. For the first 10 years, I think the NRM was right to say, we need a broad-based government, inclusive. Merit is important, but we should, do inclusivity, because at that time, it was turbulent. You need to bring everything on board. So broad-based government was very important, to get that inclusiveness and unite a country and move forward. So the question we should be asking ourselves, should we be still in that broad-based system of making sure everybody on table, even when it doesn't mean a merit. So I think as President Museveni appoints his cabinet, I hope all of these issues, I think, are going to be weighing on his mind, because he has clearly mentioned this is going to be Chisanja Hakuna Mchezo squared, or a much more deepened Chisanja Hakuna Mchezo. If the previous Chisanja Hakuna Mchezo did not work efficiently.
As far as corruption is concerned, you were actually, you spent most of the 5 years playing. As far as corruption is concerned.
So the point I'm really trying to make is that the president, I think, even this result, you know, from the speech that I saw, got him to really get a bit on the balcony, get off the dance floor from the action, and reflect, you know, on the years since he started politics, you know, to kind of assess where are we, what are the challenges, what are the things where we have just put veneer and we have been massaging and not acting on. And I hope one of the key indicators for me will be the kind of cabinet that he appoints.
Okay.
That would be a marker on how we are moving forward.
Maybe that should take us into something that I wanted us to also touch on. Sheila, in terms of the, and I think it is, I don't know whether it is Gobi or Morrison who said, this election, remarkably, was not so much about issues, but emotive arguments and sloganeering. What do you think are the issues that we missed in this campaign that has just ended?
I think, personally, I would say some of the issues we missed out are issues to do. Basically, we have the issue of corruption, which has been recurrent and people have continuously talked about it. There has been issues of certain areas being marginalized, and I think we still need to address that issue of people feeling that they don't belong. That is something we need to actually address, because when a group of people feel they don't belong to a particular system or things the way they are done, I think that is an issue that needs to really be addressed. And that sectarianism, I think sectarianism has continuously been part of our politics, where you hear people referring to people as Westerners, people are being referred to as Northerners, Easterners, Central. So, Banyarwanda, for example, and to me those are issues that we need to actually address. We have to build national unity. How do we do it? Issues to do with unemployment. Unemployment is key. The youth are angry simply because it's not just a style that people are angry. People went to school. They are young people. When you finish school, you want to be engaged productively. You want to be hired for something that you studied. If not, you need to be retrained. So as a country, we need to think about those issues seriously and stop this politicking of we are fighting a dictatorship must go. Yes, we agree, it is granted. President Museveni has stayed around for quite some time, and well, with all due respect, Morrison, we should be planning for the exit in a good way. But at the same time, those issues must be addressed rather than politicking. He must go, he must leave. Yes, he must go. But are we as a nation addressing those issues that we need to look at critically? Because after he's gone, we shall still have the issue of sectarianism. We shall still have the issue of unemployment of the youth. We shall still have an economy that is struggling, which we are surrendering to foreign investors, for example, because, well, it's good for foreign investors to come in and invest. But also we need to think as a country, how do we promote our own local investors? How do we give them a little push like we give the foreign investors, because the foreign investors usually come in with cheap money from their respective home countries. But I think as Uganda, we need also to think about how do we promote our own foreign investors.
I can give information.
Okay.
Information.
Okay. The information will come after this because there are people watching. One is saying, this one is called Patrick, and he says, I am happy, Charles, that the panelists actually see an increase in number of MPs directly reflecting on an increment in administration costs. Then he says, however, before the president discusses with MPs about their emoluments, he may need to interrogate the speed at which new administrative units are approved. And when he says that, I had done some research that, you know, between 2006 and today, and 2021, we have had an increase of 1.7 million new positions, political or administrative units in the country. In 2006, we had 1.2,864,000 number of elective positions in Uganda. In 2011, we had 1.9. They increased by about 720. By 2016, we had 2.286 million. Right now, by December, we had 2.7 million elective positions for a population of 40 or 42 million people.
16 elective
positions
per every Ugandan.
So something to that. No, one position for every 16 people.
16 Ugandans are led by one person.
Yeah, at every stage.
There is a governor for 16 people.
And then, so that is what Patrick is saying. And I think we need to reflect on that. But the question I wanted to throw back at you, Morrison, which is part of the sloganeering, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I stand to be corrected. Our president, good as his intentions are, knows that the emoluments of MPs specifically is ingrained in the Constitution. The Constitution making process, especially the amendment, is initiated by the executive. Why was that intention not initiated in the last amendment if it was not part of the sloganeering you're talking about?
I think the president said he had not reflected on it, and there is always time to, in my view, correct a mistake. And I think the executive is always, of course, again careful not to interfere with the co-equal branch, which is the legislature. So it's always a negotiation. So even when the president says, because he's summoning a caucus, he's actually not summoning the entire parliament to Changwazi. He's summoning his caucus for a conversation. Because you see with MPs, when you are a president, you are negotiating because this is, you know, a co-equal branch. So I hope, this is why we are saying that some of these fundamental issues really need to be discussed. But I wanted to make a comment on Shira's.
Okay, it is okay. But Gobi will come in maybe after. But you know, similarly to that, the issue of administrative costs going high or public administration, there was a proposal made by government, I think 2 years ago, to cut down or even merge authorities and agencies, which would cut down a lot of costs. But government could not go ahead with it. Isn't that part of the malaise we're talking about?
I think it is part of ineffectiveness of government, because the paper was, I think, first of all, generated by ISO and then some other, government task groups that came up with a paper that talked about streamlining really government to ensure that you do not have clashing mandates, to find two agencies fighting for mandates to deliver one service, to the people of Uganda. And I think there were recommendations that are supposed to be studied by cabinet, because I think the challenge again, by the way, as a lawyer, the registering or combining required changes in the law that required parliamentary action. So there was never a move because you could not pursue administrative changes. Some required legal.
Legalize them.
Yeah, changing the law, because most of those entities are established by acts.
In fact, all
by acts of parliament. Yeah. But you see, all that, in my view, this is one country. These are the lead. As long as the leaders agree, some of those processes can be quickly, even if they require the law to be amended or to be changed, they can be done.
Okay.
But I wanted to respond,
go for that.
You know, because she talked about investors, local. You see, the president again mentioned it. If a foreign investor sets up a factory in this country, it employs Ugandans, it pays taxes, URA correct taxes, those taxes are sent to the consolidated fund. From the consolidated fund, government pays teachers, pays health workers, builds roads. That's number one.
The local investor.
So even those foreign investors who actually need them really, and each and everybody, every Ugandan should be attracting and marketing this country as a destination for investment, no matter where those investors are coming from. We are also promoting really local investors and entrepreneurs. Some people are saying that Uganda Investment Authority is giving land to only foreign investors. Then UIA, Uganda Investment Authority, released the numbers that show that land in Namanve here, which is Kampala, you know, industrial and business park, 70% of the land allocatees are Ugandans. It is only 30% that are foreigners. But also there are incentives that have been put in the 2019 Investment Code Act, that for you to get an investor license when you are a Ugandan, you only need $50,000 US. But when you're a foreigner, you have to show and pay 500,000 United States dollars. So foreign and local, there is a difference. Then Uganda Investment Authority and other agencies, including Uganda Development Corporation and others, have put funds to support small scale and medium enterprises. And most of those are really Ugandans across the board. So it is also sloganeering for some people, and I've had people like Kano Besija and others, sloganeering, saying that the country is not supporting local investors. So I think that's not based on fact.
Okay. Gobi, you had wanted to respond or add on to something.
No, you asked about the issues.
Yeah.
And I think there are 3 issues for me. Issue number 1 is implementation. Issue number 2 is implementation. And issue number 3
is implementation. You think that our laws are fine, policies are fine,
I really think
papers are good, so if we implement them, we are good to go.
And I was happy when the president was addressing the country this evening, was actually very, very angry with these 3 issues. Much as he has said a lot of words, he was actually saying that I'm so disappointed with my government, which is not implementing what we agree on as a government to do. Because most of those things he has outlined, free education, universal immunization, free medicine in hospitals, monetization of the economy, job creation, name it. All of the policy documents are on the shelves. Now I think going forward, we should even be changing the conversation here, because the election is over. So discussing the issues which should have informed the campaign and the election is not going to add a lot of value. But if we say what should be done to implement the manifesto of the National Resistance Movement, because NRM has won this election, the president has won the election, in the next 5 years, how are they planning to do these things, which all of them, as the president has really outlined them? He was like campaigning today. They are the issues which Ugandans would want to be addressed, and once they are addressed, I'm sure he should have retained his cabinet, but now he has, I think, half or quarter of a cabinet still intact.
He doesn't have any minister from Buganda.
So how do we, therefore, ensure that this issue I'm talking about of implementation is addressed? Because in Uganda we talk a lot of good things, but we fail to do very simple things on the ground. For example, this issue of livelihoods in Kampala here. COVID hit all of these younger people. And there is a Minister of Finance, and its agencies. I remember the Minister of Finance issued a statement at the budget reading. We are going to support by putting up a number of funds. How are we implementing these funds? Because now, to get this livelihood, like a younger man who was making this chapati they call Rolex, you know, his sigiri and the chapatis he used to make and whatever, he ate all of them during lockdown. He just needs something like 80,000 shillings
to restart.
And survive until such a time when you have created a more productive job for him in the factories Morrison is building under UIA. But how do you make this younger man, before he goes to the ballot paper to vote, secure his present before he secures the future? So critical.
Okay.
And these things, they don't need rocket science. These funds can be mobilized, but who does these things is so critical to ensure that they are done on ground practically, and the younger people are mobilized in town. That's why you see they voted when they are very angry and hungry, and with that they just ticked wherever they just go and tick wherever you see umbrella.
Okay.
And they ticked, and they nearly ticked the government out of power. So you need really to address this issue of enforcement and implementation of why are you laughing? Government was about to be ticked out of power.
Government is family.
You make voting so an easy manner, eh?
It's amazing. I was there this evening asking my people in my own household. Now, so you guys imagine, these people were ticking. They were about to tick, and tick government out of power.
But they could have ticked the Sigirinya as leader of opposition.
That is still in the
it is
in the pipeline.
Yes, it's
possible.
Yeah, it's possible. NUP is
and
going to form the official opposition, and Segirinya, as one of the MPs elected as a member, stands a chance to become the leader of opposition
and Hildeman the chairman of PAC,
and provide alternative policy
to
government.
People like Ishira should help us to explain what is really stopping us in countries like Uganda to implement simple things, which we always talk about, write about, and they are doable. To do them so that, and this is the headache I saw the president has.
I think it's lack of political will, lack of commitment, that we normally talk a lot and leave it on paper, because I think Uganda is one of the countries that has the best policies, best laws, but in terms of implementation, I think it leaves a lot to be desired. And then it goes to the leader, because if you are a leader, if you are a head of state, you are supposed to follow up. If we made a law, we made a commitment, how far have we actually delivered on that? Otherwise, time will come, people will take you out of power.
Good. Someone called Tinker says, cutting costs in Parliament will be a drop in the ocean. We have RDCs, presidential advisors, LC5 chairmen, and so on. These are all ticks to the taxpayer. That's what he says.
but I think the principle, in terms of what we are saying, was, reorganizing the government to laser focus, on efficiency.
Yeah.
So if there is dead wood at different levels of government, there has to be a review. Who do we need in districts, for example, to deliver? What kind of a local government you know, and how should it be structured to be able to deliver efficiently services to the people. So I think those are conversations that must happen. You know, this is why I was saying, for example, that if you look at manifestos of all political parties, it's like, they are really the same. The difference is in how they should be implemented. I think the only political party in Uganda that has ever provided an alternative structure of government different from what NRM espouses or is implementing was the Federal Alliance. When I hope she's still the president, the Honorable Betty Kamya, where she talked about a federated state, where, and I think she looked to people like Karl Polanyi, you know, Karl Polanyi and his book, The Great Transformation, and then, you know, Peter Evans and his book, Embedded Autonomy, to figure out ways where this government is near the people, has got both fiscal, okay, legislative and administrative power, okay, to be able to deliver. But what you have now is districts that have political power without fiscal power. And I think that imbalance cannot really allow efficiency at the local government level. Yes, Sheila.
Morrison, I think to me all that the districts, the new creations, the blowouts of the south, the east, the west municipalities, I think it is intended to serve what we've just gone through, electioneering. Yeah? Those new constituencies, I think they were intended to serve a purpose. I know sometimes people think rigging of elections is at the ballot box. But when we as leaders decide to really create those constituencies to serve our purpose, then we have to bear the brunt. So the deadwood Morrison is talking about, I don't see how you eliminate it, yet it is that deadwood which has helped to propel the NRM into power.
Can I give information?
Wait, before you give the information, you have to answer, but I wanted to add more weight onto that question.
Okay.
Morrison, that LC5 has contributed, the LC5 you're saying are too many, today contributed to the 5 million that you are seeing. That cow, through a trickle-down effect, that cow, because his family is seeing, if I change now, I'm not sure I will have food. That cow contributed to the 5 million. That LC1, because he is now, he or she is in government, he is my brother, and I am depending on him or her, I am saying I must vote for John Katumba, because John Katumba being there will guarantee our safety.
Let me first
so how do you then turn around after you have won Morrison and then say, now you LC5, you LC1, get out?
No.
Isn't that part of the sloganeering we are blaming?
No, not at all. Let me first of all tell you and the viewers that even before we had so many districts, NRM was winning. That even before we had...
That's true.
Yes. So in my view, you know, quantitatively or progressively, I don't see a major change. But Shira, you remember, you know,
actually,
Shira,
the percentage has reduced.
You know, Honorable Shira, and myself share a heritage in Rukunjiri. Where, let me first of all tell you, Honorable Shira Mishambi, let me first of all tell you that some people in Rukunjiri...
You have started bribing us.
No. And you are saying,
so we are being held at ransom now.
My Muko Charles from Nyachenyi again in
a family meeting.
So, you should share it. You should share this meeting. You are more...
Yeah. So what happened? What happened is that in the previous, the previous elections, some people, agitated for creation of a municipality because they thought if you create a municipality, NRM is going to have, more MPs. That municipality was created and FDC grabbed it.
So it was very fast.
Yeah, it was counterproductive, and I think it has even happened in many areas. So I think we have to look at these things in a balanced way. And finally, You see, LC, I want
LC is saying that even the two Nakawas that have just been the opposition ran
they were taken
very hard. So, both Nakawa West and East.
So it is okay.
And
I want
us to us now.
Charles.
We didn't need them, maybe.
Hold on, Rochelle. I want the LC5s, the RDCs, everybody to have jobs. But the view I'm putting forward is that these jobs should be in the private sector. We should create an economy that emphasizes more jobs in the private sector and not in the government, because government, that's the cost of administration takes away resources that would go into stimulating private sector. And private sector jobs, there is more imagination, there is more creativity, there is more innovation, and that private sector side with guidance and facilitation of government is what is going to transform Uganda.
Okay, you wanted to come in, but as you come in, someone is saying to answer Gobi, what fails us to implement simple things. This is someone called Isavire. Is simply corruption, the syndicated robbery where technocrats allocate money to areas where they know they own interest or franchises and wait for that money from a corner. That's what this person is saying. Then another person here, the person doesn't have a name. The person says, why don't we do regional parliaments like South Africa in order to reduce MPs' numbers, Charles? And then someone called Julius says, I think this is the same person, someone called Julius answering that. Do you want to respond especially to this person, Isavire?
There is nothing to really overemphasize. One thing Ugandans need from government and from NRM in particular is actually to see change in their lives.
Yeah.
And to feel that this change is felt in terms of their well-being. I've always told the people I speak to, and I often speak to people in an organized environment, I tell them that the legitimacy of a government lies on two major things: jobs for the people and good services for the people. Everything else is a detail. All this preoccupation with, the politics, people running around, wanting to say that we want to change a leader, we want to vote out all these ministers, these MPs and so on. It's because people are lacking those two things. A job gives people a good livelihood, and then the good services is all what we depend on.
Okay.
Now, I would think, therefore, that these other factors you hear, because even this factor of corruption, we need to discuss it in detail. What is the corruption in Uganda? Is it corruption of greed or corruption of need?
Mostly greed.
Because you are having, for example, policemen accepting a bribe or even soliciting it. Then you are having a big person in the government also procuring something of low quality, of value, than what he was given. You might find that the other person of procurement is engaging in the corruption of greed.
Yeah.
But there is also this corruption which is killing a country, the corruption of need.
The policeman.
The policemen.
The nurse in the hospital.
The nurses are stealing medicine.
The
teachers are stealing chalk, and so on. You need, therefore, to address the well-being of these people as well, so that you can now say, since we have improved your well-being, you are having a house where you are sleeping, we are paying you a living wage. Why are you stealing our medicine? Such a person should go to jail and you throw the keys in Lake Victoria. But when someone is still having to survive on, for example, a wage or a salary of 200,000, 400,000, in an economy where the silent inflation has been increasing the cost of living over years, and then you say you are going to fight corruption, unless you are going to turn all these buildings in Kampala as jail, you might not succeed. Okay. So we need to balance up also these conversations. Let us make corruption a very risky venture, which is a greedy one, but also sequentially. First of all, and this, by the way, the NRM committed to do in the manifesto, restructure government to ensure that the government that is in place is efficient enough to deliver. Then to enhance the pay and other emolument of the people whom you have rationalized. Then after that, deal with the corruption.
Okay.
In that sequence, but not to think that you're going to do it as an academic conversation. It will not work.
Okay, I think we are left with I think under 15 minutes, but there is a question that someone asked us to discuss, said this is an important issue, the issue of the choice of the candidate-elect to make in order to create efficiency in government. And the person says, for me, what I would want you to discuss now is what kind of cabinet lineup, what kind of choice is the president now going to make for the new government of a vice president, since the old one has been thrown out, the choice of a speaker, the choice of a prime minister, and how about all in Buganda? How will it play out, where all the ministers are now outgoing?
Let me start.
Start.
I am not the appointing authority to speculate on such matters. I pass on the baton to you.
Keep thinking about how to answer. Sheila, what in your view would be?
Should I pick up from him and I say I'm not an appointing authority? But I think I would have, I would have, to me, an opinion that I think as a country we've always gone into all these dynamics of who to appoint, and we do not zero on the professionalism. I think for me, I want to look at the quality of the people appointed. We always go in for where does this person come from, balancing the boat, and what religion, whatever, what ethnicity. I think it's high time as a country we mature. I like the way the children, our children, have moved on to say, I think we need more quality. I normally listen into the conversations of the young people. A number of them have, especially those who have been in school and interacted with so many other people, they tend to look at now issues. What do I get from you? What are you offering? Rather than President Museveni going back into our history because he's saying we don't want to go backwards. So let's now look at professionalism. The minister being appointed, what is this minister actually going to deliver? And what are the issues Ugandans are talking about? So that we do not go into these dynamics of tribe, religion, and etc., etc. Let us look at Ugandans with the professionalism. I think all ethnic groups in Uganda can produce those different people if it's terms of quality. Because when I go to do an interview for a job, rarely do they ask me, where do you come from? They ask me, what can you deliver? What would you do in the next 5 years? That has not been done in Uganda. So I think
including a political job.
Yeah, President Museveni should just call a panel and they interview these ministers. Don't take them to parliament because the parliament is
You want to bypass parliament now?
No, it should just approve. But let's have professional ministers, people who can engage. I've had the situations where a minister can't engage with the technical people, and the technical people are completely flabbergasted with a minister who cannot click on the issues they're supposed to work on. And that is a dilemma for this country.
As a follow-up to that, someone says, to avoid a mediocre cabinet, since Parliament is full of mediocres, I'm not sure that Parliament is full of that, but this is the view of the person, Museveni should appoint ministers from the corporate world. This way, ministries will be run like corporate organizations with good governance.
You see,
Morrison, your view on this?
And I think because the reason why we had the agencies of government, where you had these other agencies, you find there is a Ministry of Trade, but there is another agency that is doing trade, was to kind of corporatize
export promotion,
was actually corporatize government to make sure that you know, the roadblocks, the policy and the bureaucratic roadblocks are removed. But I think also that has not delivered. So I think we need a deeper discussion to go with his point around restructuring of government to ensure that, you know, there is absence of clarity on that. But also too, when the president started the 2016-2021 you know, term of office, for the first time he laid out, I think, around 10 that read, I think it was 18 agenda
there
items.
Were 18. Also in Chankwan.
Yes, and clearly articulated the key performance indicators for each minister. He even wrote to them. But somehow after 1 year, that kind of disappeared. So we don't know whether the president, in making reshuffles or changing ministers, he did that review. But I think he had started very well. But I want to agree with Sheila to the extent that this idea of broad-basedness of, I think the focus, in my view, should be on quality, should be on really to emphasize this again on quality. And the kind of cabinet he appoints, people will know whether he's serious in terms of the seriousness he has started with, or whether it is business as usual. So I think it is a very important test. Then finally, also Professor Gobi talked about rationalizing salaries for the civil service and making sure that the remuneration, not just for scientists, but across the board, police, you know, the military, the prisons, the nurses, you know, the teachers, that they are at certain levels. And you see, that is supported by economics and scientific evidence. I know Professor Gobi, and you know, you have, you know, you read this book by Professor Easterday, and Easterday says, if you give people, you know, better salaries, as long as they are spending in the country and they are not going to Dubai to buy perfumes, okay, and they are spending here, you know, it increases the aggregate demand. And this aggregate demand stimulates the economy through production and then, in effect, creates more jobs. So expenditure, okay, and, you know, expanding aggregate demand is good for the economy. So I think there is a scientific and economic basis for government of Uganda to improve salaries for the civil service and beyond.
Okay, I think we need to make a wrap up. I need your just 1 minute each. We're left with about 5 minutes on what you see going forward now in the next, because between now and May, when a new government comes in place, there is still this balance of 5 months, about 5 months, that the ongoing government has, including Parliament. What would you want them to address these 5 months, that transitional period?
I don't know actually whether there is much they can do in that period. Actually, some people think it's a very long period of recess since from the old government to the new, that we should consider rethinking also that period. It is too long. What if, for example, we had to change government?
The reason why they made it long, part of, actually, I think 2 months, I think 60 days, I need to check. I don't know whether it is 45 is actually is part of the election process. For in case of a petition, to sort out the petition, and then allow the assumption in law. Our constitutional making organ, the CA, was wise. They thought that if in case you had the election overturned, then you have to go back to another process, and then you plan a swearing in, which would be. So I think it is not long for nothing. It is only long if there is no complaint.
Okay, since we have defended the period, I think what the current government should use it for could be for healing.
Good.
The wounds, I think, which have been created, and I think they are quite deep wounds. And to me, this healing should focus on how do we address the issues of the youth, particularly the youth in urban areas of Uganda, but in particular the greater, this metropolitan Kampala. We need to see government coming up with an emergency program in addressing, because this post-COVID, we call it post-COVID. COVID is going on, but still we can call it so. Scenario is for real. The younger people in Kampala are broke, and they are becoming a bit hopeless. They are not seeing hope, in other words. That's what I mean. And there is need to really rehabilitate them financially by bringing in some projects which, you know, cash for work and things which can keep them busy. Otherwise, we might even see more problems. You remember the 2011 walk to work and stuff? I anticipate without any deliberate measure to address the challenge of livelihood, we might see more problems. But as we also do that, let this government reflect on the issues we have been discussing, such that by the time they are taking over, they have finalized the Chankwanzi retreat, which Morrison was referring to. But also in the bigger picture, we need to think the distinction between free democracy and free for all democracy, and see how do we, you know, address this, because this free for all, punctuated by indiscipline, by the return of tribalism, by the return of religious kind of undertones, clanism, and so on. I think this thing, we shouldn't just massage it. It needs deeper analysis and thinking, and how they are going to address it.
Okay. Sheila?
Yeah. I think
on the next, these 5 months, if you want to add it to, if you want to strengthen his point, go ahead, because just before we came on the show, we were talking about the deep divisions that elections usually create. It's not only exclusive to Uganda. You see how countries like the US is completely cut into two. You see blue and then red. Now Uganda, you see, red. Who said it is an island? Was it Gobi? Now you see an island of red in the central Uganda and part of Busoga, and then yellow across and deep division.
So you reminded me of America. Biden is going to swear in a cage. They are caging the Capitol Hill for the swearing in to happen in the United States of America.
Because of the threat of attack.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the largest democracy in the world. Well, I risk saying where God comes from, they say what to the Mwami Kyakova Nange Chenkova. But
meaning what to the nation?
Meaning that what he says, I agree with it. But still,
this comes from Butamba, not from...
Okay. Okay. Now, what I really would say is that I think for me what I would desire very much is still the issue of building an opposition for our parliament. I would really desire that even if the new parliamentary elect members are not yet sworn in, they could begin organizing in a more, because Parliament is about talking and putting your issues across. I would wish that they converge and start strategizing how they can be a formidable opposition in Parliament, so that we don't see a Parliament, a dramatic Parliament like we saw in the one which is outgoing, where people are throwing chairs at each other, where there are fights in Parliament. So that as they go into Parliament, we are going in there to really ensure that they do the work of the legislatures. So my appeal would be opposition, let them organize, because they have a chance to make a difference. They have a chance to build the opposition parties that have been demobilized. So I would really wish that we get a respectable Parliament.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Morrison, you're going to wind, you be the last, but some messages coming from our audiences. I think let every ministry be headed by only professionals, and the cabinet minister should be of old age, and the state minister a youth. There the future is secured. This is Julius from Fort Porto. And then another person says, Comrade Charles, Happy New Year. Can we also look at issues from quality angles, from merit? Can our politicians be less selfish? I agree with the lady who, this is not very clear. Then he says, no MP should be a minister in my view. Why should they determine their remuneration? That's for MPs. Ubuntu is lacking. Can we be more humane? Morrison, your last your recap on
I think my recap
the next 5 months.
My recap is really to how do we quickly answer or rescue, have a rescue plan really for young people, I think in urban centers who don't have a garden to go to stabilize, especially some relief plan. So I think that's very important, and there are some ways that we could do it. One is that, for example, in all these urban centers, there are, like, for example, roadworks that really need to be done. Sometimes when there are no jobs, the state needs to spend resources to refurbish the infrastructure, and young people get the jobs. Or if there are some other things to build or to do, there has to be some thinking around that. But also, really going forward, the programs that are aimed at rescuing the youth, but also creating jobs, shouldn't be looked at as political gifts and giveaway, where you're giving people just money and they go and spend it on things that are not productive. There needs to be a clear process for how beneficiaries access this, and perhaps cap like interest rate at just 2% to make sure that people are serious when they get this money, at least when they have this idea that they need to pay back. Even if you give them some other relief, then they get serious. I think that has been lacking in a way we have been implementing youth programs. Then finally, really for the next month, really before the inauguration of President Yoweri Museveni, a vaccine for COVID should be here. I would want, my parents and my neighbors and all Ugandans to really be inoculated, to have the jabs. So it's very important, really, in my view, in the next few days for the Minister of Health to come up and tell us what's the plan, for the COVID vaccine. I think that's extremely important.
Thank you very much, Morrison, and thanks so much, Sheila. Thanks a lot, Gobi, for finding time. But thanks a lot, especially to Gobi, who from the beginning started being part of this analysis and the election hub here, and all of you, Morrison yesterday and today, and Sheila today. And Sheila, there is someone here who says, someone called Helen, she says, great show. Sheila has been great and done us proud as ladies. Well done. I think this must be following from yesterday's harassing of the moderator.
Yeah, and I remember the name was Helen, by the way.
And then she says, the election week has had rich discussions. UBC has lived up to its name. Now, Morrison and Mr. Gaba, that's for you. The UBC has lived up to its name. Keep this up. Now, that means I have to say thank you so much to the technical team. Thanks a lot to the producers and the production team, the producers, and all the entire team here, you know, that. And thanks so much to the entire Election Hub team for making this possible. And but more especially, we want to congratulate again the candidates who participated in this election, all the 11. And of course, there can never be a victor without those who participated. And we thank God for all of you. May we keep the peace. Never forget, COVID still exists. We need all of us alive, especially young people. Keep the social distance. Wear your mask whenever you are meeting people. And ensure that you wash your hands, you sanitize, wash your hands with soap. And we need your life across the other side. When 2026 comes with another election, more young people are needed to participate. You can only participate if you are alive. So avoid any situations, whether it be a riot or something that calls for you to endanger your life. Stay safe. God bless you all.